Topic is a vertical approach and a simplified prosthetic protocol. And I'll try to take you through the protocol that we have been using now for quite a long time. Of course, we are talking about vertical geometry on fixed prosthetic dentistry. And this part one, what are the learning objectives? What we'll be learning? Actually, I'll try to give you some info about a scientific background of finish line and why are we using finishing vertical finishing line and why it's so popular and useful. How the finishing line, the vertical may affect the mechanical and the biological response, and most of all, the interface between the vertical finishing line and the periodontal support. I'll try to give you some clinical advices showing you the step-by-step protocol about a tooth preparation and the provisional phase. This is part one. Then in part two, we'll talk about final impression, materials, and other things. Of course, we're talking about the geometry. So we are basically changing the geometry of finish line preparation. We have been using for many years the horizontal type. So now we have switched and we have started to use the vertical geometry. And these are some of the features that we have apparently improved using the vertical finishing line. We managed to get a better soft tissue response. We tend to be very much less aggressive on teeth. The soft tissue response in the middle long term is quite predictable. And of course, we can use any kind of ceramic material on a vertical geometry. So let's get started and let's see what's behind the vertical geometry. Actually, this is what is considered conventional, what is believed to be the conventional approach in terms of finishing line geometry and tissue management. So we have an horizontal type of preparation and we have untouched tissue, soft tissue. But what we've done a few years back, we have changed the approach in terms of geometry and tissue management, something that we call alternative as a conventional. So we have basically shifted the paradigm on restorative dentistry on a fixed prosthodontics. What is the conventional approach? Conventional approach is something that use an horizontal type of preparation. Let's take this case, for example, and so let's see what can be the problems that we have experienced for so many years with the conventional approach. Let's take this case, and on your left-hand side of the screen, you can see the date. The case was started on October 2004. We have these 4 failing crowns in the front area. We have the 2 laterals and the 2 centrals, which are failing. They have a secondary decay. We have infiltration, and we have aesthetic problems. We have tissue recession and stuff like that. So what I do my initial prep and do my first temporary crown. Then I deliver my first temporary, wait for healing. Then I make the final preparation with the horizontal type below subgingivally, of course, about 1 millimeter, 0.8 to 1 millimeter below the gingival level. And I deliver my second temporary crown. Wait for about 4 to 6 weeks according to the literature to make final impression. Use a 2-core technique. And back then, I used the polyether material for final impression. And of course, if a master cast and the finish line must be easily read on the master cast, so the technician needs to have a very easy lecture of reading of the finishing line. And I delivered in April of 2005 4 single zirconia crowns. And this is what happened 14 years later. So we are in 2019, as you can see on the left of your screen. 14 years later, everything looks pretty good. Soft tissue is good. So we had no recession, and the zirconia crowns are still in place and very good looking. And this is objectively can be considered a success. So, but take a look at all the clinical steps that we had to take, and the time that we had to dedicate to this case. So from baseline, we did one temporary, we did a second temporary, then we made final impression, lab work, the final delivery. It took about 4 to 6 months to finish up this case nicely like we did. Of course, it's very time consuming, and unfortunately, it's not always predictable. Let's take the second case for example. The baseline is 2006. The steps are exactly the same. The clinical protocol, the traditional approach is exactly the same. We make a nice and neat subgingival horizontal preparation. We deliver the temporary. We wait about 4 to 6 weeks for final impression. We deliver then 2 zirconia bridges, one on the left and one on the right hand side. And it took about 4 to 6 months, even this case, to be finished up. So kind of a lot of time. This is the date of delivery, and this is what happens 3 years down the line. So we have recession, soft tissue recessions. So patient is not happy at all. So the patient is coming back and she wants to have the work redone because she is not happy. But I did everything according to the book. So I respected the time. I used correctly the materials, the impression, the final impression with the double core technique, and so forth. But unfortunately, in this case, the outcome was quite different. Actually, the soft tissue recession showing an evident failure of a restorative work is something quite common, more common than we think. According to the literature, in the mid and long term, 15 to 35% of the cases can experience some recession. And this is a lot if you think about it. So, but what is the reason for this recession, for the soft tissue recession around the artificial crown? Let's take a look at the literature. So let's take this work published in 1987. They made a comparison between two